Joining me right now is Trump Presidential Campaign Senior Advisor for Strategy, Steve Cortes. Steve, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. How's the president doing,
Good morning.
Steve?
He's doing really, really well, and I say that for a couple of reasons, because there's so much obfuscation, unfortunately, by the media out there, which seems to almost wish that he weren't doing well. But here's the reality. We spoke to him. We, meaning the senior campaign leadership, spoke to him on Saturday. He was as assertive and upbeat as he has ever been. And more importantly than that, than our conversation with him, of course, the world has seen him in several videos now, and his medical team gives us a terrific assessment. We're hopeful that he's going to be released from the hospital today, and we're extremely confident that this man, who's just an incredible fighter, he's been governing throughout this whole process, but we're confident that he's going to be back at full throttle campaigning very, very soon.
Well, I mean, do you really want to rush it now, given the fact that you want to make sure that the recovery process is lock solid? I mean, is it too soon to have him out of the hospital since he just went in on Friday?
Well, listen, Maria, I'll leave that up to the medical authorities. I'm certainly not one. I'm confident that he has the best medical care in the world. This team of medical military doctors are taking great care of our commander-in-chief. So I defer to them. If they tell us that he's safe to go, to my amateur eyes, he certainly looks fantastic. He looks ready to go back. But again, I'll defer to the scientists. I find it fascinating, too, by the way, though, that a lot of the critics of the president who constantly claim that he's not, quote, following the science, all they do now is doubt the scientists. And in the case of Dr. Conley, by the way, not just a scientist, but a military one, somebody who was a commander of a trauma unit in Afghanistan. So this is not just a man of science and technology, but he's also a man of incredible patriotism. And I think it's reprehensible that his character is being impugned. I won't do that. And we in the campaign, again, will defer to them. Of course, we're not going to pressure the president. But believe me, nobody needs to pressure him. This is a man who wants to get back to work yesterday.
Sure.
But look, everybody has to listen to the medical authorities.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. We're going to speak with Dr. Ronnie Jackson, the former physician at the White House, coming up in the show. He's coming up in about an hour. But how's the campaign doing now with the president in the hospital? The election now less than a month away, 28 days, right. Steve. President Trump's re-election campaign has shifted a bit as a result of the diagnosis. Vice President Mike Pence taking over for the president on the campaign trail as the president recovers. Sure. He is still making decisions, though, and working through his hospital stay. I understand that. But what are you doing at the campaign while he's in the hospital? And what do you make of these polls that, sure. Biden saw a jump after the debate, Steve?
Right. So, listen, we've had to adjust, certainly, on the fly. But that's life. That's what we have to do. And that's exactly what President Trump wants us to do here. And we know that he can't be replaced. I mean, he's truly one of a kind. But we also know this, that the MAGA movement is not only President Trump. He's instrumental in it, of course, but it's not only him. So there are a lot of other really effective voices we've taken to the airwaves, with abandon over the last couple of days. We're launching today. We're calling it Operation MAGA. We're going to launch a lot of digital rallies. And then after the vice presidential debate on Wednesday, we're going to fan out across the country, a lot of us to host in-person events, to give speeches. We're going to do the best we can to provide content, to flood the zone with content. And again, none of us is Donald Trump, but we can still deliver Trump's message. And we're going to see, depending on his condition, what he can do via videotape, digitally, until he's ready to get out physically again. To answer your question about the polls, look, there are some polls that are alarming. There are some that are really reassuring. For example, I know that the CNBC one was not good for us, but if you look, for instance, at Investors Business Daily and Zogby, both of those national polls narrowed dramatically to very tiny Joe Biden leads. We don't, in the campaign, pay a ton of attention to national polls because, of course, that's not how our election is constructed. When we look at battleground state polls, I think here's the reality. Either camp could win most of these battleground states. And so I'm trying to not be a partisan for a second. And I think that's an objective view, is that the battleground states are very tight in most polling, whether it's public or private polling. In the next 30 days, the reason I believe we're going to win these polls is we have the compelling value proposition of an American economy that is surging higher right now. And I know we still have a lot of work to do to get back to the heights of the Trump boom that we enjoyed in the earlier parts of this year. But the results are tangible, and there are very data-driven reasons to be incredibly optimistic about the trajectory of this economy. That's our most persuasive case to the American people, that they should rehire Donald Trump as our national CEO.
Yeah, what does the campaign say about the potential for a contested election, Steve? Do you think we're going to know on election night? Do you think that what kind of a result are you expecting? And you are expecting the Democrats to contest it, right?
Unfortunately, Maria, and we see things going on. They're already now laying the plans. Look, they've been trying to nullify the 2016 election for years through the entire Russia hoax.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they're going to continue those kinds of tactics into the 2020 election. They've already formed groups such as the so-called Transition Integrity Project, which is about anything but integrity. So we are prepared. Look, it's sort of the old axiom of hope for the best but prepare for the worst. We hope, of course, that we have a resounding win and that we win in large enough fashion that it's impossible for them to try to contest. But we have to be ready that they would contest if we win a narrow election, particularly in battleground states that are controlled by Democratic governors and often with Democratic state secretaries of state. So we are prepared for that. How? A couple ways. One is we have a crack team of lawyers. We are ready to litigate if need be. We also are ready to effectively continue the campaign with public relations and media efforts.
Yeah.
If we have to try to de facto win the election twice, I hope that's not the case, but if we have to, we're ready to do that, Maria.
All right, Steve, we'll be watching. What a year. Incredible. Thanks so much, Steve Cortes.